week's episode of Star Wars Rebels, Hera and the Ghost Crew return to her home planet of Ryloth so that she can retrieve a precious family heirloom. Unfortunately for Hera, the Empire is already there, taking control of her family home. We also finally get to see the return of the blue-skinned, red-eyed Grand Admiral Thrawn. This week's episode of Star Wars Rebels is brought to you by the importance of family. The importance of family. It's a cheesy-ass concept. I had a lot of high hopes for this week's episode of Star Wars Rebels. The fact that we were finally going to see Grand Admiral Thrawn return, an episode that was going to focus on the character of Hera Syndulla, not to mention she was going to be reunited with her father Chem Syndulla, who is a character who appeared in Star Wars Clone Wars. Unfortunately, this was just kind of an average episode of Star Wars Rebels in my humble opinion, which was decidedly simple and really not all that exciting. Although, I still like learning a little bit more about the history of Hera, seeing where she came from, and damn, her original house is, like, ridiculous. It's practically a palace. I will say that I was really excited to see the return of the Blurgs, which are those weird amphibious lizard creatures that they ride on at the beginning of the episode. The first time that I ever saw these things was in the Star Wars spin-off Ewoks, The Battle for Endor, and they appeared a couple of times in Star Wars Clone Wars, and I'm glad that their goofy asses are back in this episode. In fact, I'd say my favorite scene from the episode was probably the opening sequence where Chem Syndulla was running away from the Empire. They were chasing him with speeder bikes and tanks, and they were actually riding on these Blurgs. It was a real thrilling sequence, especially because the Blurgs would actually, like, pick up the freaking speeder bikes and, like, toss them into the other ones, causing all types of ridiculous damage. For goofy-looking creatures, there are some badass beasts of burden. You can keep your Tauntaun, I'll keep my Blurg. The sequence gets even more exciting when the Ghost Crew comes in and they swoop in and they try to save Cham and his companion. And what I love most about this sequence is, of course they save them, but you got this one scout trooper who's trying to be a badass, who actually really is in the entrance that he makes, where he backs into the ghost ship, goes inside, pulls out a blaster. The problem is, he's surrounded by way too many people. Plus, this is a great excuse for Ezra to finally have another stormtrooper thing to add to his collection. And that scout trooper outfit is going to come in handy, as he's actually going to be using it in this episode. The main plot point is that Hera and Ezra are going to go to her original home, and they're going to try and retrieve this artifact, which is known as a Kalikori, which is basically what someone in a family on the planet of Ryloth will inherit if they're going to get the new home. And while Hera does want this, as it is important to her family, she still wants to get rid of the Empire presence, which is currently subjugating their planet and controlling all of the people on it. And we get the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn, who was just awesome in this episode. So cool, so calculating. Even when Ezra and Hera break in, they originally think that this is just a lone peasant Twi'lek. But of course, Grand Admiral Thrawn knows that something's not quite right here, and he puts two and two together and he realizes that this is actually the daughter of Chem Syndulla. The scene where he interrogates her is just brooding, dark, and awesome. One of the best Thrawn moments from Star Wars Rebels, without a doubt. So they end up catching Ezra and Hera and throwing them into prison, and then you got this great scene where there's this one Imperial commander by the name of Slavin who gets really angry about the fact that they just caught these people and they're not just going to completely obliterate them. And for some odd reason, this just really pisses Thrawn off, and he gets up in his face. And then he just sort of casually calms himself down, wipes off his sleeves. He's like, everything's cool? I've just got some other shit I gotta go take care of? You and me are cool, right? Clearly, I can't do Thrawn justice. He's a character who just broods so much amazing and evil atmosphere, but he was definitely one of the highlights of this episode and arguably saved it. Most of the episode, though, is just pretty much your standard fare, with Hera and Ezra trying to escape from their home, while at the same time simultaneously planting bombs all over it, getting in contact with the Ghost Crew as they're defending against the Empire. They eventually get picked up, they get saved, and they learn the importance of family, blah, 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 blah. That part just came across as a little forced and cheesy for me personally. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Star Wars Rebels? I think this whole episode was saved by Grand Admiral Thrawn. Without a freaking doubt, his character is just so much fun to watch, and you know that every single time he's on screen, that shit's frankly just about to get real. The scene where he realized who Hera was great, especially the way he was actually selling all this stuff to General Slavin, the way he sort of built her up over time, the rebel warrior, the military leader, the daughter of Chem Syndulla, your nemesis. it was just so cold and calculating, and that's ultimately what's so great about Grand Admiral Thrawn. He's always a couple steps ahead. Hell, even at the end of the episode, after Chopper plants these bombs all over the base and they make this big explosive escape, Thrawn lets them leave. He just lets them escape. He knows he has something bigger in store for these guys, and he's not just going to blow his load completely. They're really going to do a great job in this series, I think, of building up what Thrawn is truly going to be capable of, and it's only a matter of time before they fall into the spider's web. Also, there were just a few other scenes that I did enjoy in this episode, mostly them being all of the action scenes. I liked the walker attack and the scout troopers at the very beginning of the episode. There was one scene that I felt was a little stupid. It was that one part where that one Twi'lek who was hanging out with Cham, he took out this rocket launcher and he's getting ready to aim it at this walker, and instead he aims it at these rocks in an effort to try and create some sort of barricade. Dude, you should have just shot the walker. Luckily, that scene is rectified when at the very end of the episode, as the Ghost Crew is taking off after they've just saved Hera and Ezra, you have Kanan who walks out and he uses the power of the Force to catch this missile in midair and throw it right back at a walker. It was satisfying, and I wish we would have had more Kanan in this episode, but this was definitely the Hera episode of the 3rd season. And I like Hera. I think she's a fantastic character. I just didn't really learn that much about her in this episode that I didn't know before. It was kind of interesting to actually go to her home planet of Ryloth, the home of the Twi'leks, but it's someplace that we've been before, and it really wasn't all that crazy. Still, this was a Grand Admiral Thrawn episode. We got to build on one of the other members of the Ghost Crew, and I loved all of the speeder bike sequences, so this was still a pretty entertaining episode of Star Wars Rebels. If anything, it's just sort of an average episode of the series, so I'm going to give this one right here a 3 out of 5. Make sure to check out this episode of Star Wars Rebels, Star Wars fans. If any of you did watch this week's episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. I thought this was an okay episode, but what about you guys? Did you really like this episode? Did you have a favorite scene? What do you think of Grand Admiral Thrawn so far in the series? Is he living up to your expectations? What do you think his ultimate goal is going to be? And what do you hope to see from the rest of the 3rd season of Star Wars Rebels? Thank you guys so much for watching this review. I really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment, and why don't you like the video? I would really appreciate it. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.